What's up, guys? Welcome in, welcome in. Got another tier list for you today. Obviously, the big news of the week was Mo Salah announcing his departure from Liverpool at the end of this season. And as much as the first thought went to where's he going to go next and who is going to be even come close to replacing him at Liverpool, I also started to look back and started to think about his legacy. And that brought me to this. Is he the greatest foreign import the Premier League has seen? And that got me thinking about some other guys. And so here we are today, making a tier list of the Premier League's greatest foreign imports. Now, of course, we couldn't include everybody. That would have taken forever. So there are some notable names not on this list right here. I only included foreign players to either win the Premier League Player of the Season award or the PFA Players Player of the Year award. So that was the bar that the players had to hit in order to be included on this list. So obviously, some super big names left off this list that I feel like I wish I was including here. You think of Didier Drogba, Rodri, Heung-min Son, Bruno Fernandes, Sergio Aguero, and the rest. But this is for the elite of the elite, and we're going to put them in the tier list. We obviously got the top dog list, which is the GOAT list. Then we got legend. Then we have cult hero, and then we have good servant. We're not going to get too negative here. None of these players belong in an overrated bin or anything like that, in my opinion. But yeah, as always, engage. Let me know what your thoughts in the comments. Who do you think is the greatest foreign import of all time? Where do you think Mo Salah is going next? And let me know what you think of my list. But let's jump right into it. Starting off with Manchester City legend Vincent Kompany. Now, Kompany was the main man. He was arguably almost like the face of Manchester City's early success before Pep Guardiola. I know he was still around when Pep came in, but you just think about his celebration, that goal that he scored against Manchester United to beat them at the Etihad on their way to ultimately winning their first Premier League title. Then you go back to that obviously unbelievable strike against Leicester to all but secure and or even just inspire City to win the Premier League title again. He was absolutely phenomenal. One of the all-time great leaders and captains in Premier League history. And yeah, first one off the bat, and I think the first one that's going into, I'm sure there's plenty of Man City fans that believe Vincent Kompany belongs in the GO category. And you know what? That's fair enough. I wouldn't fight you too hard on that. But for me, he belongs in that legendary category. Like I said, one of the all-time great captains, was the face of Manchester City before the Pep Guardiola era. Still managed to stick around and win a couple of titles with Pep as well. I think he finished as a 4-time Premier League winner. I believe he finished as a 4-time Premier League winner, maybe even 5. I'm not 100% sure on that one. But yeah, now he's obviously taking the steps into management. Looks like he could end up being a great manager as well, doing very well over at Bayern Munich. But yeah, Vincent Kompany absolutely has a lasting legacy in the Premier League. Definitely belongs in that legend category. Okay, next up, we have the first Manchester United player. Obviously, he didn't spend his whole career at Manchester United. Spent the time across a few clubs in the Premier League. It's Dwight Yorke. And obviously, he had that great partnership with Cole at Manchester United. He was part of maybe the most famous and successful magical seasons in football history. And Manchester United won the treble in the 98-99 season. He also won the Golden Boot that year, but of course he did share it with a couple of other players. 18 goals in that season, and he was great. He was such a steady, he had that longevity. He was just such a consistent goal scorer in the Premier League. Obviously a member of the Premier League 100 club. Did his thing at a number of different clubs. Obviously started at Villa and at Manchester United, two of the bigger clubs, especially in the 90s era of the Premier League. But for me, I think I'm going to put Dwight Yorke into the good servant category. You know, he was never anything spectacular. He was just a good player. He just did his thing, went about his business pretty quietly. I don't think he ever hit over 20 Premier League goals. Was more about longevity than like elite play on the field, and that's why I think he belongs in the good servant category. Obviously, he was a good servant for more than one Premier League team, so I think that's a good space for him. But I obviously, as a Manchester United fan, may have been before my time, but I've watched enough tape and heard enough stories to know just how good he was, especially in that 98-99 season. But I think good servant is where he belongs. There you go, Dwight, first member of the good servant category. Next up, we have a really, really interesting one. Juninho Paulista. Some may not remember him from the Premier League. Some may not remember him at all. But when he came to Middlesbrough during the 96-97 season, it was huge news. It was a spectacular coup for Middlesbrough to be able to pick him up. And he starred. He's got 12 goals and 9 assists that year. He won, as I said, like you had to win the Premier League Player of the Year or the Players Player of the Year to get in this. He did that in that season, despite the fact that Middlesbrough got relegated, which is just crazy. The fact that with him and with Ravanelli, Middlesbrough still found a way to get relegated was unbelievable. But that season was so close to maybe being the greatest ever in Middlesbrough history because they lost in the FA Cup final and in the League Cup final. They were so close to 2 trophies, and yet somehow they managed to get relegated. Like, absolutely insane that that's the way it went that season for them. Should have been so much better. But like anyone that wins an award when you were on a relegated team, you had to have been a class above. You really had to stand out. And that's exactly what Juninho did in that season. I know he came back to Middlesbrough later in his career. Never really kind of caught the magic of that first year. But just for that first year alone, and you know the way Middlesbrough fans feel about him, I think he's going to go into the cult hero tier. That's where he belongs. He's definitely full, like that's just him in a nutshell is cult hero. He's like the definition of cult hero. He was like that 90s guy. He had that bit of flair, that Brazilian magic, brought it to the Premier League. One of the first Brazilians, I believe, to play in the Premier League. Definitely part of the first Brazilian star to play in the Premier League. Literally, in my opinion, the definition of a cult hero. That is Juninho. And now we're back to Manchester United. And this is a player that I was tempted to put into the GOAT category. I was originally, when I was thinking about this, I was going to do a top 10 foreign imports. I was going to rank my top 10. And honestly, I had Nemanja Vidic in there. But I am going to stick him into the legend category alongside Vincent Kompany. I don't think I can put him above him. I honestly believe that they belong on the same tier. Vidic was just a phenomenal player. His first 5 full seasons at Manchester United, he had 74 clean sheets and 149 starts. That's basically half the games he played in. They kept a clean sheet. He also contributed 17 goals and assists. That's 14 goals, 3 assists during that time. He won 4 Premier League titles. Won 2-time Player of the Year, 4-time member of the Premier League Team of the Year. Just a phenomenal defender. Like his prime at Manchester United, those first 5 years, and during that time, he was also at the heart of the Manchester United defence. That was the best defence over a 3-year span. That period where they won 3 straight league titles from 2006 to 2009. Manchester United were the second best defence in Premier League history over a 3-year span, only beaten by Mourinho's Chelsea. So that just shows just how good they are. We know how insanely good that defensively that Mourinho Chelsea first spell at Chelsea was. So yeah, that's just a sign of just how good Vidic was. Great in the air, great leader, one of the best defenders. I know people like to remember and harp on the issues that maybe faced against Fernando Torres, but Fernando Torres often got the better of him, but for consistently, Vidic was fantastic. And like I said, to win 4 Premier League titles in your first 5 seasons and to win 2 Premier League Player of the Season awards as a centre-back, that just says it all. That just shows the unbelievable quality that Vidic had. Absolutely belongs in the legend category. For me, he's probably in my top 10 when we're talking about the greatest foreign imports of all time. I believe he made such a huge impact at Manchester United. Obviously, bias coming in a little bit as I am a Manchester United fan. Everyone will probably say Kompany and a guy we'll get into later on, Van Dijk, are definitely ahead of Vidic. But for me, he's right on par there, and he achieved just as much as either of those two have achieved in the Premier League. So, now next up, we got Patrick Vieira. This, I think, is the first one that's going to ruffle a few feathers. I have him in the legend category. Patrick Vieira was a fantastic player. One of the most dominant midfielders the Premier League has ever seen. He just has that iconic image of him with the Vic on his chest and just waltzing around the field. Just like he was just bigger and badder than everyone else in the Premier League. He was absolutely iconic. Part of an unbelievable Arsenal team. Won 3 Premier League crowns with them. Was the captain, of course, I think for the 03-04 season. I think that was the first year that he was captain of the team. Just a fantastic midfielder, could do it all, box-to-box play, had that dominance. Obviously, the battles with Roy Keane, they were just like, that's the most iconic era of Premier League football, in my opinion. Vieira had so much quality, so much class. I think a lot of people will put him in that GOAT category. And again, like I said with Company, I probably wouldn't fight you too hard on it. Vieira was an absolutely phenomenal midfielder. One that we really don't see anymore. Like I'd honestly liken him to Rodri. I get that Vieira maybe was a bit more of a box to box, but I really think that those they just have that size, that physicality that he had, as well as just his ability to get around the pitch and do it on the ball as well as off the ball. Like that, those are the kind of players that I'd liken to each other. Vieira was absolutely phenomenal, the leader of that Arsenal pack. I know they obviously had some more star talent around him, but I think when you take him out of that Arsenal team, and I just don't think they have the same amount of success during that period of time. He was such an important player for them, arguably the X factor, arguably the face of that great Arsenal team under Arsene Wenger, and one of the all-time greats in the Premier League. I think the legend category is fair for him. Didn't quite achieve as much, didn't have quite the lasting legacy as some of the players that I'm going to put into that GOAT tier. Just saying. So before you judge too quickly, let's look at the players and listen to the arguments I make for the players that I have in that GOAT category. Then next up, we have Peter Schmeichel, the one and only goalkeeper to make this list, as he was the only goalkeeper to ever win Premier League Player of the Season. And for that reason alone, I'm going to put him into the GOAT category. And I say for that reason alone, there's a million reasons why Peter Schmeichel belongs in the GOAT category. He was absolutely phenomenal, without doubt, in my opinion, the best goalkeeper the Premier League has ever seen. And you just think about the fact that, what if he had never left Manchester United? What if he had just stuck around with United for another couple of years and then retired, instead of going off to Sporting and then coming back at Villa, Manchester City? Maybe you could argue kind of harming his overall legacy in the Premier League just a little bit. But for those first 7 seasons of the Premier League with Manchester United, yeah, they won 5 Premier League crowns, and he was just absolutely phenomenal. How many times did you see him make a mistake? Very rarely. And some of the greatest saves we've seen in Premier League history have been produced by Peter Schmeichel. He just had that charisma, that build, that kind of craziness that a goalkeeper needs to have, and he was everything for Manchester United. Definitely the greatest keeper in their history, and definitely, in my opinion, the greatest goalkeeper in Premier League history. And if you are the greatest of any position in Premier League history, then you have to go in the GOAT category. It's just as simple as that. I'm interested to see your guys' thoughts on who is the greatest Premier League goalkeeper of all time. I know some will probably say Cech, some will probably say Ederson or Alisson, and maybe even someone will say Seaman. But for me, I just think overall Schmeichel just had more than anyone else, and just the combination of everything that he was able to do puts him as the greatest of all time. Also has a goal in the Premier League too, which is pretty nice for a goalkeeper. Next up, we have Luis Suarez. Obviously had an amazing year in the Premier League that last season before he went to Barcelona, but they didn't win the league title. That was the biggest mark against Luis Suarez, outside of the other things like the racial abuse of Patrice Evra, biting Branislav Ivanovic. He was a dirty player, one of my least favorites of all time. Honestly, I think if I was doing a hate list, Luis Suarez would absolutely be on it. But the quality that he did have, the impact that he had at Liverpool, that is undeniable. There's not really a right tier for him, I don't think, for his period at Liverpool. I think he would be a lock for cult hero, maybe even legend, if Liverpool had managed to win the league and they hadn't bottled it during the 2013-14 season, where he also not only won the Premier League Golden Boot, but also the European Golden Shoe. But for now, you're going into the cult hero box. Obviously had a great impact over a short spell at Liverpool. One of the most fantastic individual seasons, the 13-14 year. But man, the difference it would have made if they had found a way to hold on and win that Premier League title. That was that calamity, the fact that he couldn't help get them over the line. That's a mark against him. So I think cult hero is a good space for them. Honestly, you could slip him down into good servant if you want, but I know Liverpool fans won't be having that. And someone who had that level of individual season that he did in 13-14, I think that entitles him to the cult hero position for sure. And we're back to Manchester United, and it's the one and only Cristiano Ronaldo. And I know people will say that his best years were at Real Madrid, they weren't at Manchester United. I don't care. He arguably has the greatest 3-year peak in Premier League history from the 2006-2007 season to the season that he left 08-09. He was absolutely phenomenal, and he absolutely belongs in the GOAT category. Not hearing any noise about that. Ronaldo was an absolute sicko. He was an unbelievable player. Those 3 years were just pure and total dominance. 86 goals and assists in 101 games. And depending on where you look, some say even 95 goals and assists during that time in the Premier League. And yeah, let's just look at all the things that he won. 3-time Premier League winner, 2-time Premier League Player of the Year, 2-time PFA's Player of the Year, Ballon d'Or win, Golden Boot win, 3 times in the Premier League Team of the Year, 2-time Football Writers Player of the Year, 1-time Premier League Young Player of the Year. Yeah, absolutely outstanding. He initially broke the record for goals scored in a 38-game season in the 07-08 campaign, when he went on, of course, to win the Ballon d'Or. Manchester United also won the Champions League that year. But over that 3-year period, like, everyone feared Ronaldo. The things he was doing, the dribbling, the goals that he scored, like that 07-08 season was just absolutely magnificent. And people forget what a great dribbler that he was. Like, the speed of the step overs, the chops, everything. He had so much quality. And the partnership we had with Rooney, and then obviously that developed then between him, Rooney and Tevez, it was some of the all-time great football we've seen in the Premier League. Ronaldo is a superstar. Yeah, you can make the argument his best years are at Real Madrid. That doesn't mean that his years at Manchester United weren't unbelievable. He's just that good of a player that he was able to raise the bar when he went off to Real Madrid. Think about the fact if he hadn't left for Real Madrid that year, Manchester United, maybe they win 5 Premier Leagues in a row. Who knows? Maybe they win 6, maybe they win 7, depends how long he stays. Like, he was so good, far and away the best player in the Premier League over that 3-year period. And yeah, just 100% in the GOAT category. I don't want to hear anyone saying that his best years are at Real Madrid. It doesn't matter. That 3-year peak from 2006 to 2009 at Manchester United was arguably the best football we've ever seen in the Premier League. So yeah, Cristiano Ronaldo, you are absolutely in the GOAT category. Next up is Virgil van Dijk. And I know this will be the one. This will be the guy that everyone's screaming at to go into that GOAT category. And maybe people will say that I'm being biased by not putting him in there as a Manchester United fan who, of course, hates Liverpool. But I just don't think I can put him above Kompany and Vidic. I think he belongs in the same tier as them. He's a legend. Van Dijk is an absolute legend. But I think it's important to note the decline we've seen since he had that injury. I know it's like tough to blame everything on injuries, but I think that's it. We have seen a noticeable decline since that serious injury that he did have. Obviously, he kind of bounced back a little bit last year, but he's really fallen off this year, and Liverpool are struggling. 2-time Premier League winner, obviously almost won the Ballon d'Or in 2019. He's won everything there is to win at Liverpool. But I just think he hasn't achieved anything more than Vincent Kompany or Nemanja Vidic. He's arguably achieved less than the two of them did in the Premier League. So that's why I think they all belong on the same tier. You're really kind of splitting hairs between the three of them. They're arguably the 3 greatest centre-backs that the Premier League has ever seen. Definitely the 3 best foreign imports the Premier League has seen in terms of central defenders. Obviously, you know, your Ferdinands, your Terrys, your Adams, they're all kind of in the conversation there as well for the greatest of all time. But I think that it's totally fair to have them all in the legend category. Maybe he had a couple more Premier League crowns. Maybe I would bump him up. But obviously an all-time great. His peak was maybe the highest peak that we have seen. The kind of 2017, 2018, 19 seasons. Like, he was absolutely phenomenal. So definitely a legend. I know some people want to push him up to the GOAT, but for me, I think the legend category is perfectly fair for him. But that's not me like playing down Van Dijk. Like I said, his peak was absolutely like unstoppable. Like, when you think about those stats you remember going around about no players like dribbling past him and all that sort of stuff. He was just peak, or he just kind of had to look at a forward the right way, and he had already got them beat. Like, he was absolutely insane, and one of the greatest Liverpool players of all time, in my opinion. 100%, definitely in the Premier League. All right, Thierry Henry is up next, and he's obviously going in the good servant category. Just kidding. He is the first non-Manchester United player to go into the GOAT category. There you go. I think most people will say that Thierry Henry is the greatest foreign import the Premier League has ever seen. And there's a lot of unbelievable arguments for that. Obviously finished runner-up for the Ballon d'Or in 2004 or 2003. Not sure, one of the two. 3 straight Premier League Golden Boots. Only other player to do that, Alan Shearer. Premier League Player of the Year, multiple occasions. European Golden Shoes. Just so cocky, so good on the ball. Like, obviously had that unbelievable 20-goal, 20-assist season. Henry was absolutely spectacular. He could do it all. He could do everything that you could want in a striker. He was just mesmeric. Like, he was the sexy side of the Premier League from like 2000 to like 2006. He was the sexy side of the Premier League without doubt. He was absolutely phenomenal. The goal scoring, just the impact at Arsenal, the legacy that he left. How could he not be in the GOAT category? I mean, think about the goals that he scored. Like, I always just picture that one, that volley on the turn against Manchester United. Like, that's arguably the best goal we've seen in Premier League history. It's right there in the conversation for me. Just everything about it was just superb. He could do it all, from the simple to the spectacular. Thierry Henry absolutely belongs in that GOAT category. Truly, truly phenomenal. As much as I do despise him, obviously as a Manchester United fan, he used to torture us, but more so I can't stand him as a pundit. I mean, I hate him for that handball to beat Ireland in the World Cup qualifiers. But when we're talking Premier League foreign imports, when we're talking Premier League legends, Thierry Henry's name is right up there at the top of the list, and I have to give him his flowers as much as it pains me. All right, we're sticking with Arsenal. Next up is Freddie Ljungberg. And honestly, I feel like I could easily throw him in the cult hero category for that red mohawk alone. The red mohawk is one of the most iconic hairstyles we've ever seen in Premier League history. If he was just a slightly bigger profile of player, the amount of conversations that would be had about him and the red mohawk and everything he did with that would be insane. They'd never stop in the Premier League, especially when we talk about Premier League history. But just for what he achieved and the player that he actually was, I think good servant is a good place for him. Really solid player. Stepped up with some crucial moments for Arsenal. Was obviously part of the league winning teams in 2002 and 2004. Yeah, just an all-time great servant for Arsenal. And I see him there with the red mohawk. That was obviously iconic. I think back to that goal that he scored at Old Trafford to clinch the league for Arsenal. Like, that's such an iconic moment. Like, going up against your most heated rival away from home and beating them to clinch the league title. Like, that is absolutely huge. That's one of the all-time great moments in Premier League history, if I'm being completely honest. Obviously a moment of pain for me, but a moment of pure ecstasy for Arsenal fans, and I imagine they remember that moment fondly. But I just think he never achieved that much. He never went off. He never led the league in assists or goals or did anything too spectacular. So I think good servant is a good place for him. But like I said, the red mohawk, without doubt, one of the most iconic hairstyles in Premier League history. Obviously, we have to look at David Beckham when we're talking iconic hairstyles, but I honestly think Ljungberg is right there after him. Next up, we have Ruud van Nistelrooy. A lot of Manchester United players on this list. Not my fault. Manchester United players won so many awards. I'm telling you, it's not my bias coming in, I swear. Where is a good place for him? Very, very interesting. Obviously, came into a period at Manchester United where they were semi in a lull. Obviously, won one Premier League, but they weren't at that dominant level. They were kind of in a transition period during his time at Old Trafford. But at the same time, he was one of the all-time great strikers in the Premier League. You could make the argument that he is the greatest pure finisher that Manchester United have ever had, the greatest pure goal scorer that Manchester United have ever had. And he could do it all. Like, you think about that dribbling and that amazing goal he scored when Manchester United were playing Fulham. Like, he was a quality player, one of the best in the box that we've ever seen. And it's just a shame that he doesn't have a few more accolades to really kind of bump up his Premier League legacy. But 95 goals in 150 games. You think about that penalty miss. He was just about a yard too high on that penalty. That would have prevented Arsenal from going undefeated. You think how close he was to completely changing history. It's unbelievable. I think he belongs in the cult hero category. had a bit of a ugly kind of exit from Manchester United, but the impact that he had when he was there, winning that Golden Boot, kind of going toe-to-toe with Henry year on year for that Golden Boot, which was not an easy feat, it is super impressive. I think if you wanted to drop him down to good servant, I wouldn't fight you too hard on it, but I think he belongs in that cult hero category. Some of the goals that he got, just the impact that he had at Manchester United, he was absolutely fantastic. And just like we give Liverpool credit for going toe-to-toe with the amazing Manchester City teams over the years, I think we need to give Van Nistelrooy credit for going toe-to-toe with Henry in terms of the battle for the Golden Boot year on year, because that was no easy feat. So yeah, cult hero I think is a good spot for him. But like I said, if you wanted to drop him down to good servant, I wouldn't fight you too hard on it. Next up is Ruben Diaz, and this is a really interesting one because I think he's been fantastic. I think he's been so important for Manchester City since he's come in. He's been a rock solid player at the back. He's the defender that they've had who's kind of been most consistently on the pitch in terms of their centre halves. We know the injury issues that Ake has faced, that Stones has faced. Like, Diaz really has been so crucial for Manchester City. He's won it all, multiple Premier Leagues, Champions League, FA Cup, League Cup. He has done it all, but I just don't think he's got the legacy of a Company or a Vidic or a Van Dijk. I'm sure Man City fans will probably argue with me, but I'm going to put him in the good servant category. He just doesn't have that aura. He just doesn't have that history on his side. And I know that makes no sense because he's been part of arguably the most dominant team we've seen in Premier League history. But I just don't think history will look back on him as fondly as some of the other defenders in Premier League history. I don't think he'll ever be in the conversation for the greatest centre half of all time. I'm sure Man City fans and maybe others will say he belongs right up there with your Van Dijks and your Companies and Vidiches. I'm interested to hear your argument on that. For me, I think good servant in terms of this list, that's probably the category that best fits him. I think he's probably gonna have the accolades on his side. I don't think he's ever going to have the story and the moments on his side to really be considered an all-time Premier League legend. So that's why I'm going to drop him down to the good servant. Maybe a little bit harsh, but I think that's the fairest category for a guy like Ruben Diaz in my humble opinion. Next up, we have the man that inspired this list. It is Mohamed Salah. And yes, of course, as much as it pains me, he does have to go into the GOAT category. I do believe he is above Virgil van Dijk. I do believe he was and is the ultimate difference maker for Liverpool. He was the guy that changed things for them. I know we talk about Klopp and obviously we know the impact that he have, but you take Mo Salah out of Liverpool over the last decade and where are they? Do they ever win a Premier League title? I'm just not so sure. The goals that he's contributed and the level that he's produced at have just been absolutely unbelievable. Third all time in terms of Premier League goals and assists combined. Fourth all time in terms of the most goals scored in Premier League history. And honestly, when I was doing my research for this, not as many penalties as I thought. He's still pretty high up that list, but he's been taking them for the best bones of 10 years now. I thought he was going to be higher. I honestly thought he might be right up there behind Alan Shearer, but not as many penalties as you think. And just some of the spectacular goals, some of the crucial moments that he stepped up last season. Just absolutely absurd numbers to drag Liverpool to the Premier League title, to give the ownership no choice but to give him this bumper new contract that they've obviously now agreed to part on. But the impact that he had since coming in the 2017-2018 season, 32 goals, setting the record for a 38-game season. Obviously, it's since been broken by Erling Haaland. But to do that from the right wing position, to do that after struggling so much at Chelsea, not being able to really find his feet, what he has done, the redemption story for Mo Salah as he kind of came in back to the Premier League as this flop from Chelsea, who hasn't really done anything spectacular while he's been away in Serie A, and just to completely flip the script. Like, he was never close to producing what he's produced at Liverpool at any other club, and to do it on like that big stage, to do it at Liverpool where the pressure is on, and to be a two-time Premier League winner, one of only I think 5 players at Liverpool, the guy who really kind of got them over the line, they made the difference for them, like Mo Salah, 100% one of the greatest of all time, absolutely belongs in that GOAT category. The numbers he's put up against the big six in his time at Liverpool, the fact that he's won so many golden boots. I know he's shared a few of them, so he doesn't have the outright lead. But last season, his first season in the Premier League, like those 2 seasons alone could put him into the GOAT category. Like there are two just absolutely spectacular seasons, and the fact that he basically like backed it up with assists as much as he did with goals, and that like forward line, Salah, Firmino, Mane, just unbelievable. And then like even the relationship he built up with Luis Diaz on the opposite side as well. An all-time player, and the Premier League is absolutely going to miss him. Next, we have the presumptive face of the Premier League in terms of foreign players now, and that's Erling Haaland. Obviously, still a pretty new Premier League player, but has already had such a ginormous impact. I think I could be early here and like put him in the legend category. I think we come back to this a year or two from now. He's in the legend category, maybe already up in the GOAT category. Just for now, I'm going to put him into cult hero. Just because he's still kind of at the beginning of his Premier League legacy. But like, let's just look at it so far. 2-time Premier League winner. 130 goal contributions in 126 games. 107 goals in that time. 2-time Golden Boot winner. Right on the cusp of maybe winning a third this year. He's still only 25. Like, if he keeps with this production, he might just be the one to challenge Alan Shearer for that all-time Premier League goal-scoring record. He has committed his future to Manchester City. It appears he's here for the long haul. He is going to end up as a legend, as one of the greatest of all time. Set the record for most goals in a 38-game season, scoring 36 and 35 games in his debut campaign. Absolutely phenomenal goal scorer. I know people like to pick at his all-round play, and sometimes when he goes cold and City are struggling, but he is still such a great player, one of the all-time great goal scorers, honestly, already, despite still being so young. And yeah, cult hero, I'm just putting him in here because he's still right at the beginning of his legacy in the Premier League, and he maybe by this time next year, he might already be a legend. And maybe a couple more years after that, he'll already be in that GOAT conversation. That's the impact that he's already had. The rate that he's scoring goals at is absolutely absurd. So Haaland is only going to rise up this list. But cult hero, I think, is a good spot for him right at this very minute. And now we have our first Chelsea entrant on the list. Chelsea are obviously one of the clubs that have brought in some of the all-time great foreign imports. But the first one we have is Eden Hazard. And Eden Hazard is a legend. So he goes in the legend category. Hazard, obviously there was moments where he kind of dipped off, but for the most part, he was just a consistent threat at Chelsea. Obviously, we know what happened when he went to Real Madrid, but the fact that Chelsea signed him, he delivered so much at Chelsea, and then they sold him for a profit, and he didn't really do anything after they sold him. Like, they got the best out of Eden Hazard. They got the best years of Eden Hazard's career. And yeah, he's the definition of like a streets won't forget footballer. Like, I know that's what we kind of maybe call underrated players, like a Dimitri Payet and Adam Benarfas, but like Hazard's like dribbling ability, his like low center of gravity, like it was always just so, you always just felt like something was going to happen every time he got on the ball. Obviously, he was absolutely superb, especially those 2 seasons where Chelsea won the league during his time there, 2014-15 and 2016-17. So much quality, 85 goals, 56 assists. The things he could do with the football, his dribbling ability, like honestly, he's probably right up there. Maybe the best ever dribbler the Premier League has seen. He's definitely in the conversation. One of Belgium's obviously all-time great players. And the fact that we got all of his prime, just like Mo Salah, we got his full prime in the Premier League. And maybe some might want to bump him up into that GOAT category. I'm sure some Chelsea fans will. But just didn't quite produce at the levels of the guys that are already in that GOAT category. So I think legend is a fair place for him. But Hazard, well, like I said, streets will never forget just how good Eden Hazard was. And it was great to see a player of his quality play his prime years in the Premier League. That's what you want. You want the best players playing in the Premier League. And boy, Chelsea wish that they had a player like him right now for sure. Next up, Paul McGrath, an all-time Ireland legend. But when it comes to the Premier League, I think he was just a good servant. His best years were behind him when we got to the Premier League. but still did some good things. Obviously, he won the award in the inaugural season of the Premier League. That's how good he was. We know Villa were just right on the cusp of winning that league title, and maybe he would have bumped up if Villa were able to hold on. But thankfully, they were pipped by Manchester United in the end. But yeah, McGrath, like a lot of people will say, he is the best player to ever come out of Ireland. Like, that conversation is there. I've heard those comments from my family members who I really respect their football opinions, like my dad. I've heard it from a lot of other Irish fans who watched him play at major tournaments for Ireland and watched him play in the Premier League in those early years. But I just think that the world saw the very best of him before the Premier League came along, and I think good servant is a good place for him. He had a pretty short stint in the Premier League, so I think it's kind of hard to put him in any other category. Maybe if they, like I said, maybe if they had won that league title that first year, maybe he'd get a bump up. And it hurts me we don't get to talk about how great Irish players have been in the Premier League too often, but McGrath is definitely one of the all-time greats. So definitely hurts me a little bit to put him in this bottom tier, but obviously just fills me with pride the fact that he was the Premier League Player of the Year the first season of the award. The first season of the Premier League, like, just a huge achievement. Paul McGrath, one of the all-time great Irish players, without doubt. Next up is Kevin De Bruyne. And again, another player who initially flopped in the Premier League, went away to the Bundesliga, re-established himself, found his groove, came back to the Premier League, and under the tutelage of Pep Guardiola became arguably the greatest Premier League player we have ever seen. So, Kevin De Bruyne, you're going in the GOAT category. Yeah, I mean, there's only so much you could say. Like, the things that he was able to do with the ball, you could argue with over that 3-year stretch from maybe 2020 to 2023. Kevin De Bruyne's name was always constantly brought up when we were talking about the greatest player in the Premier League. He had that peak. That was where he was at. So it's kind of hard to not have him in the GOAT category. Anytime your peak was in that, anytime your name was in the conversation for the best player in the league, as consistently as it was with De Bruyne, it's hard to not have him in that GOAT conversation. Like, he's got to be right up there. The things he did at City, like when he first came in, he was still kind of looking a bit iffy. There was in big moments, it felt like he was still not quite that player. But then working with Guardiola, he really did develop into the player that Chelsea thought they had back in the day, and the player that he always believed that he could be. Like Guardiola, I think he's arguably Guardiola's best project, best achievement. What he was able to do with Kevin De Bruyne, the player that he was able to turn him into. Felt like he was always stepping up in the biggest moments, stepping up when City needed him most, late in the season. Just a superb player. The second most assists all time in the Premier League. Added 72 goals on top of that. 6-time Premier League winner. Pretty much only behind all the guys that were around for the dominance that Manchester United had in the 90s and 2000s are ahead of him. Obviously, there's a few City guys there alongside him. But yeah, his quality on the ball, his passing ability, his ability to play those crosses, those final balls, he was just absolutely phenomenal. Such a good player to watch. City were obviously right to get rid of him. He had dropped off in that final season he had with City, but of course they're going to be looking forever to try and replace him. We've seen the flashes from your Fodens, from your Shirkies, from others, but none of them are quite that Kevin De Bruyne. And then I think we're going to see a similar thing with Liverpool as they try to replace Mo Salah. And that's just the ultimate testament of just how great these players were and why they belong in that GOAT category. We waited so long for a Chelsea player, and we're already back to another one, N'Golo Kanté. Obviously made famous with the being part of that Leicester team that won the Premier League in 2016, then goes to Chelsea, wins the Premier League again, was one of the most dominant midfielders despite just being a little fella, only a little short arse, and yet was still so good. Had his prime years in the Premier League, did amazing things. Just his ability to win the ball, to anticipate where the ball was going to be, to always just be in that right position. I know he didn't really have that impact going forward, but the ability that he had to anticipate the ball and just always be in that right position was honestly next to none. He was the most annoying player to play against. He was always just there on the edge of the box to intercept the cross, getting a foot in when another team was on the break. He just covered the ground so well. Absolutely phenomenal player. The fact that he did it at Leicester, made the jump up to Chelsea, produced it to the exact same level, he has to go in the legend category. Honestly, one of the all-time great midfielders we've seen in the Premier League. Just the fact that he was obviously much more about off-ball work and defensive work than attacking. That's why maybe he's not going to ever get mentioned as maybe the greatest of all time or be put up there into the GOAT tier. But 100% belongs to the legend category. Honestly, you could probably put every player that was on that Leicester team into the legend category. But N'Golo Kante was arguably the standout player on that team. Got that big money move and continued to produce. That's always the big step up when you're making that leap from a team like Leicester to a team like Chelsea, where the expectations are high on you. And he answered them again and again and again. Absolutely belongs in the legend category. Chelsea, again, they've maybe found a replacement in Moises Caicedo, but there was nobody quite like N'Golo Kante. All right, final 6 names on the list. We're almost there. Appreciate you guys sticking with me, and make sure you let me know your thoughts in the comments. Next up, we have Dennis Bergkamp. This is a very interesting one. I feel like I might be getting my head bitten off by more than a few Arsenal fans when I make this call, but I think he's going to go into the cult hero category. I could understand if you wanted to put him in the legend category. I think the GOAT category is definitely too high for him, but he was just such a phenomenal player. Some of the goals that he scored at Arsenal were just absolutely unbelievable. You think of that goal, I can't even remember who it was against for Arsenal, but the flick over the head and then on the volley to score, like I think it actually might have been against Leicester. Absolutely phenomenal. The goal against Newcastle, one of the all-time greats in the Premier League, like I talked about Henry's goal against Manchester United, like Bergkamp's one against Newcastle. That was just exquisite. Like the touch, the timing was just beautiful. He had such great technical ability. Obviously, didn't quite put the stats up, the numbers up that we got from like your Ronaldos, your Henrys, your Salahs, but a consistent performer in the Premier League, key part of the Arsenal team that won 3 Premier League titles. Really brought that magic, really put like Dutch football. He was like the guy who established the footing for the Dutch in the Premier League, probably alongside like a Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank. And we've obviously seen a great influx of Dutch talent since then. But he was like that first one, and the technical ability that Dennis Bergkamp had was honestly like second to none in the Premier League. He was so good with his feet, his touch, his dribbling, everything was just absolutely spectacular. I think cult hero, though, is a good place for him. He'll always be remembered by Arsenal fans. Maybe won't be so fondly remembered by your average Joe Premier League fans or even the majority of Premier League fans. But I've watched enough tape. I've seen enough to know that Dennis Bergkamp was a phenomenally talented football player. Set up just as well as he scored. Just an all-round quality player. Definitely belongs, and I'm glad he's on this list, and definitely one of the again, like I said, a streets won't forget type of footballer for sure. All right, 5 more to go. 3 Manchester United players. Well, 1 more predominantly for Arsenal, but 3 guys who played for Manchester United remain in the 5. First up, we have King Cantona. Cantona, you are obviously going in the GOAT category. Eric Cantona, like, I know he was before my time, but I have watched more than enough tape, heard more than enough stories from people that I fully respect their football opinions to know that he was absolutely going in the GOAT category. Cantona was just phenomenal. He just set the ground for the Premier League. He was everything that the Premier League wanted to be: the sexy side, the bad boy side, the arrogance, the aura. He was everything about the Premier League. He was the guy who put the Premier League on the map without a doubt. He is that difference maker. He walked so everyone else in the Premier League could run. Every other foreign import in the Premier League could run. That is just an absolute fact. That is the impact that Eric Cantona had. Came into Manchester United and was the guy, was the difference maker. Comes in with that popped collar, that look that says, I am the guy here. Don't worry, I got you. 100% in the GOAT category. Honestly, I would say that he may just have the greatest Premier League legacy there is. That's the level of player Eric Cantona was and the impact that I believe he had. 4 Premier League titles in 5 years. Were it not for a moment of madness, probably would have been 5 straight. The only club to ever do 5 straight could have easily been that, and Cantona would have been the best team on each of those league winning teams. And just the fact that 95, 96, obviously every Manchester United fan is going on about, oh, we would have won the league if we had Eric Cantona. It was all about Eric Cantona. Eric Cantona's come back. We're going to be great. And he knew that was happening, and he came back and showed it. He was absolutely dominant in that season, came up with so many crucial goals, led Manchester United, inspired Manchester United to come back and beat Newcastle and win that Premier League crown. They obviously went on to do the double that year, scored a spectacular goal in the FA Cup final to beat Liverpool. He was just all-time mesmeric, the aura, the popped collar. He's just like, when you think about the Premier League, you think about Eric Cantona, without a doubt. Truly, truly phenomenal player. Third place in the Ballon d'Or, was a 2-time assist leader in the Premier League. 64 goals and 51 assists at Manchester United. He really did it all. Cantona was phenomenal from the simple to the spectacular. He really could do everything. Cantona was one of the most unbelievable players the Premier League has ever seen. And the fact that he left when you could make the argument that he was still kind of in his prime. He might have just had another bit more. Who knows? He sticks around for 97, 98. Maybe Manchester United win the league title again. Like, little moments, you just don't know. Cantona could have been the best player on the team that won every Premier League title in the 1990s. Like, there was only just margins away from that actually being a reality, which is just an absolutely insane thought. One of the all-time great players, and if you don't know it, just go back and watch the tape. Cantona, absolutely spectacular. I don't want to hear any noise about him not belonging in this GOAT category. Cantona was the guy, one of the all-time legends of Manchester United, and that's saying something. Next up, Robin van Persie. Obviously made his name at Arsenal, but arguably had his most famous season at Manchester United. Great striker, one of the great all-time strikers. Obviously never fully kind of had to break out throughout his youth, but then he kind of hit that peak, and the 2011-12 season and the 2012-13 season, he was without doubt the best player in the Premier League, and that's why he's going in the legend category. He belongs there just for those 2 years. Those 2 years, he was the unequivocal best player in the Premier League. 30 goals in 2011-12 for Arsenal. Then Manchester United sign him. Ferguson says, I need to win the Premier League title before I can retire. I'm going to buy the best player in the league and we're going to win the title back. And that's exactly what happened. Back-to-back golden boots. Just a superb peak year. Obviously, he only really had those 2 years where he really was in the conversation for the best in the league, and he was the best in the league, and I think that's enough to get him up and boosted into that legend category. 144 Premier League goals. We're always going to remember, Manchester United fans will always remember that hat-trick to secure the title against Villa, the fact that he came in and got us that title back from Manchester City before Sir Alex Ferguson retired, and I don't think Arsenal fans will forget that unbelievable 30 goals that he got in the 2011-12 season. And more. I think the volley against Arsenal, yet another Arsenal player that has one of the all-time great goals in the Premier League. That volley against Charlton, just truly, truly magnificent. He was a serious player, and I think he deserves a lot more credit than maybe he gets. But yeah, that 2-year peak, truly phenomenal, and that lands him in the legend category for me. Next up is David Ginola. Now, you could go a lot of different ways with him. This is a guy where, he, like I said, he could probably be in the tier of definitely a streets won't forget type of football player. He had the looks, he had the speed, he had the dribbling ability to really make fans fall in love with football, and both male and female fans to that point. But he never truly produced at a high enough level. He came in that first year at Newcastle, like, obviously he looked great. The speed, the dribbling ability was huge. 5 goals and 8 assists. You're like, okay, you can build on that. But that was really the best return that he ever had in the Premier League. Obviously, he was the assist king in 98 and 99 when he was at Spurs. But I think he's going to go in the good servant category. Just never spectacular enough to go anywhere higher than that like I said with like a Suarez, maybe you get bumped up if he's part of the Newcastle team that win the league in 95-96, but that didn't happen, and that's why I just don't think there's any real other conversation. Like, I think good servant is just where he belongs. He just didn't do enough. Was never spectacular enough. Didn't deliver enough goals and assists to really be considered anything greater than that. But like, the speed, dribbling ability was obviously phenomenal to watch from David Ginola, and like, go back and watch. Like, he did have some serious performances. Watching him run down the line, watch him go one-on-one with a defender was certainly a sight to behold. Okay, 2 to go. And we have the final member of the GOAT tier, Mr. Roy Keane. Okay, let's hear it, Arsenal fans. I know you're going to be slamming me. How the hell could Roy Keane get in above Patrick Vieira? And I'll tell you why. Better all-round player and the greatest captain that the Premier League has ever seen. And that is why he is in the GOAT tier. Simple as that. 7-time Premier League winner. Box to box, could do it all, especially in his early years. Manchester United, like, he was really going up and down. He was the captain, leader, legend. He was just everything you could ever want in the leader. He was just like the definition of a captain. Did it all on and off the pitch. Just a spectacular player. Obviously, yeah, you can disagree with some of the decisions that he made, the bust ups that he had, but he always had his players back. He made everyone else on the Manchester United team feel 10 feet tall, feel like they could not be beaten. And yeah, just spectacular. Like I mentioned with Vieira, like, Keane's battles with Vieira and vice versa were that's peak Premier League. That is what made me fall in love with the Premier League. That's what I think about when we think the greatest Premier League era. It was Keane and Vieira doing battle, Manchester United and Arsenal doing battle. And yeah, Keane, just absolutely spectacular. Manchester United have not found a replacement since he left. Yes, they were right to get rid of him. He was declining. Obviously, it was uglier than we'd all like to remember that how it was. But he was declining, unfortunately. A lot of serious knee injuries that ultimately took their toll. Manchester United are still trying to replace him, which is just an absolutely absurd thing when you think that he left the club 20 years ago and they still haven't found a replacement. And that's just a testament of just how great Roy Keane was. And yeah, I'll hear no noise about it. Absolutely belongs in that GOAT category. All-time midfielder. And yes, above Patrick Vieira. Final member of this list. The final foreign import we're going to talk about today is Riyad Mahrez. And unfortunately, we can't finish out on the highest of highs, but we're going to finish out on a guy going into the cult hero list. Obviously, part of the Leicester team that won the Premier League in 15-16, still maybe the greatest achievement in Premier League history. He was phenomenal that year, 17 goals, 10 assists. But he went to Manchester City and just never quite produced that again. I'm sure a lot of Manchester City fans, and maybe others, would consider him an all-time Premier League legend. But the fact that he went and made that move to City, he was still good, still had some great years. Obviously won everything there is to win. Multiple Premier Leagues, Champions League, FA Cup, League Cup, all of it. Scored a lot of big goals. But just the fact that he never quite produced the same numbers that he did in that title-winning season with Leicester is why I think he belongs in the cult hero category. A lot of flair, a lot of quality. Like, he had an absolute wand of the left foot. One of the great players to watch. But just the fact that he never quite produced at that same level at Manchester City that he did that season at Leicester is why I think he belongs in the cult hero category. But I'm interested to hear your guys' thoughts. But that's going to put a wrap on this list. Pretty even spread. We have 7 in the GOAT category. We have 7 in the legend category. We've got 6 in cult hero. And we've got 5 in good servant. That's a nice little split. Guys, let me know in the comments your thoughts. Who is the greatest Premier League foreign import of all time? Who do you think needs to drop down on this list? Who do you think needs to go up? Let me know in the comments. And as always, like and subscribe for a lot more here on The Hand of Gaine. Until next time, guys, take care.